Okay, hello. We're gonna just go ahead and get started. Welcome to Manual Button Pushers. Um, there we go. My slides are going backwards. Okay. Purpose of the group is manual testers community coming together to share and learn from one another. And we'll focus on increasing your skill set and learning new tools. And this is a subgroup under the QA at the Point umbrella, and we're happy to have this started. I think we're on our third session. If you have any ideas for upcoming workshops, you can let Jeff or I know via the Manual Button Pushers Slack channel, or you could just direct message us. We have a next workshop scheduled for September 2nd, so go ahead and save the date and we will announce what the topic will be via Slack. And I'd like to welcome our wonderful speakers, Russell Johnson and Amber Ostendorf. Russell, I will hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. What I'm going to be talking about tonight is JavaScript bookmarklets for accessibility. And the may wonder what a bookmarklet is. Well, you all know what a bookmark is. Like right now, I have my mouse hovering over a bookmark for an HTML validator, and just has the so regular bookmark. You've just got a name and a URL, but a bookmarklet instead of it's just like a regular bookmark, except in the URL field you have some JavaScript instead of the URL. And when you click on it, instead of taking you to a page, it'll just execute the JavaScript on the current page you're on. And so this page you're on now is on Demo QA, a book that's a site that's often used for automation testing, well, automation testing practice. And so it's also a good one for this. The very first thing I'm going to do is something that most people don't think about when they think of accessibility is that you need to have you've got to have valid HTML. Most browsers are pretty forgiving if you have HTML that's not valid, but some assistive technology like screen readers or braille readers, some of them may not be as forgiving. And there are, I think, about like 10 or 12 categories of things that an HTML validator will pick up that that assistive technology might tend to have problems with. And so I'm really just going to use an HTML validator to show there are cases where it's helpful to have a bookmark to help with that. And this page is one that I came across that it is helpful. If you just go to you want to validate that with a regular validator, the normal validator. There are like 90 some problems this should find, but if you just go here and do this, it only shows 5. And the reason, I don't want to do that yet. I want to view the page source. There's not much page source there. And if you move this down a little bit, it's the sharing bars. Oh. Zoom sharing bar was covering some of my I was looking at there. Sorry about that. So if I copy and paste that into here, you'll actually just see the same 5 problems. But if instead you inspect the page and just copy the HTML element, and that's basically the whole page, except for this, the doc type tag at the top. I'll just replace the HTML tag, the example they have there, with the real HTML tag. And now all of a sudden you get 90 some errors. But that's kind of cumbersome to do. And that's where a bookmarklet can come in handy. Here's a bookmarklet for HTML validation. I can just click on that, and that'll show me the same 90 some problems. But not all those 90 are problems for accessibility. And I'll show you in a minute where, I'll show you right now where the that first bookmarklet came from. And then there's one that'll filter out the ones you don't care about. On About This Checker, the about page for the this validator, it mentions about these bookmarklets. This one is the one that I already use, really. You can just drag that up to your bookmark bar, and that's really the same as this. I just changed the name so it would all fit. And this is what filters things. I'll actually use the one that I'm copying up there. Why is it not? There we go. So now if I validate the page and I filter it, remove 35 items, and there's still 50 some, which is a lot. But the most of these are their duplicate IDs or the first occurrence of an ID. So you can just, if I quickly get rid of those, you'll see there's really only 2 types of, not all. I hide these duplicate IDs, there are 24 of them, and I hide the first occurrence of those. All that's left now is 10 problems, and they're really just 2 types of things. There's element div is not allowed as a child element span. You can't, div elements can have spans within them, but you're really not supposed to do the other way around. And so that's not valid HTML. And the other one, these last 3, it looks like instead of having a class here, they have a class name. And a class name with a capital N, like in a camel case, that's a JavaScript function, but I don't know of any standard HTML attribute, the class name. So that's a problem. So there are really only 3 categories of things that this found. There's this class name problem, the div not allowed as a child span element, and the duplicate IDs. So those are first 2 bookmarklets. The other ones are more what you would think of having to do with accessibility. The automation practice is another website that's often used for test automation practice. And I already, my URL, I set some parameters here. So we just have one thing here. This is an image, and a screener like NVDA will actually announce print address 5 times here. You only see it once, but it announces 5, and I'll show you why. And I'll show you how a bookmarklet can help show you that that's what would happen without you having to, before you even use a screen editor. You can see there's a tooltip on here coming from you see it says print address. When I hover over that, that's from the title on this image element. And the alt tag over here, that's what tells a screen reader what to announce for an image. A screen reader has no idea what this is. And so you need to tell it, screen reader, what it should announce. And so it's very important to have alt text for every image. Even if it's an image you want the screen reader to ignore, then you put alt equals quote, quote, because otherwise it may just announce the file name or something like that, because it tries to announce something. So any image, you have to have some alt text for it to be accessible. And then this is an image, but it's an image inside of a link. And the link also has a title element. And only one of them displays in the browser, but there are those two there. And then this caption here is it's a link inside of a heading, but that also has a title of print address. When I hover over that, it shows that. So all five of those, the alt text, this sort of caption here, the title on that, the title on the image, and the title on the link that the image is in, all are announced by at least by the NVDA screener. And if you've got dozens of images on a page, it'd be kind of annoying to hear things announced 5 times. And that's where the one bookmarklet, well, 2 bookmarks could help with that. Paul J. Adam is a accessibility expert, and he came up with we actually developed an extension for Safari Mac OS. But for other browsers, he made a lot of the functionality available in these bookmarklets. And so the images and the title attribute are 2 of the ones that I'll use here. Just images that just will show the alt text. Print it, show it right on top of your image here with yellow box around it yellow highlighting to make it obvious. And it does the same with the title. And then the title attribute, that'll do the same with title attribute. So now you can see the alt text, you can see the 2 title, one on the image and the one is on the link, and then the caption here with the title. So you can see all 5 of those. So that's those can be helpful. If you have a page full of images, it's that the image bookmarklet is helpful. I was testing doing other testing with a site, they wanted to just check the alt text on it. One of them they had actually, the site was in 4 languages: English, French, Chinese, or Japanese. And one of the things they wanted to make sure was that they had the alt text was localized. I mean, you didn't have to be able to read Japanese, but just you can tell whether if it's Chinese or Japanese versus English or French. It's it looks very different. And so just to make sure that the alt text was always localized, and that was a very easy thing to do with this kind of bookmarklet. But one of the nice things about this website here is it has for all these bookmarklets, it had a demo page, which is kind of ideal for demoing it. And this is one of the most useful ones: force, show, focus. In a browser, if you're using a screen reader, it'll often make where you are, where the keyboard is, very visible. And without a screen reader, it's not. And that's one of the for accessibility. There's a international set of accessibility standards. WCAG is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. It's by the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C, put that together, and it's pretty much international standards of what's used in the U.S. for most accessibility lawsuits. That's a standard that's appealed to. And one of the things on there is that the keyboard focus must be visible. You can, when you tab through a page, well, there are 3 other things you need to test for accessibility. One is that you can, all the controls on it can be operated with just a keyboard without a mouse. And that you can, order when you tab through the page that the controls are in makes sense. You don't, as you tab through the page, you normally go left to right, top to bottom. And if the order for some reason goes the opposite direction, that would be confusing to a user. And the other is that you're not trapped somewhere. If you try to tab through a page, sometimes there's some JavaScript or something which actually traps you somewhere. You might be here in this form box, and no matter what you do, you can't get out of it. And that's without a mouse, that's a problem. So what this, by default, you should see a focus outline that'll show you where when I tab through the page, it'll show you where you are. But that's apparently been turned off on this page. And all this bookmarklet does is it just makes a very obvious orange outline so you can tell where you are on the page. And if you can tell where you are, then you know this is a button, so you can test to see whether you can use that with your keyboard or not. You can test whether you're trapped anywhere. You can test that the order is sensible. So that's one of the most helpful things, because with I think with most screen readers will do this is when you have them on. But if you just want to do without turning on a screen reader, this is helpful. And one of their demo pages, kind of interesting here, is language. Again, for a screen reader needs to know what language your page is in. And that's what this HTML, this language tag on HTML, language attribute on the HTML tag is for. That tells that this page is in English. But here we've got a page that you've got French on the page, you've got Spanish, Portuguese, German, Russian, and so on. And a smart screener can actually read things with a proper sort of an accent, but it needs to know what what language to read things in. And here you can have these language tags on things other than the HTML tag. And so if you, all this bookmarklet does is it just does the same sort of thing as the image bookmarklet, just makes that explicit so you don't, you can very quickly scroll down a page and see where there's something that's marked as in another language. And so that's all we really have time for demoing now, but those are, there's some other ones here that can be useful, and they all do a similar sort of thing. They show the tables one shows table markup on the page. The headings one shows headings on the page. That's helpful because some screener users navigate through the page by, just like we might read through a newspaper, by scanning the headlines. You also visually may scan the headings on a page, and you can do the same with a screen reader. And so it's helpful to know, be able to see what the headings are. Make sure you can have something that looks like a heading and it's really just bold text. And a screen reader won't know that that's a heading if it's just bold text. That's why it's important to have actual headings for something like that. And so that's all I have for now. And I'll stop sharing my screen, so then Amber can come and give her presentation.
All right. Oh my gosh, that was awesome, Russell. I cannot wait to try out some of those things. I don't know if you guys see it. There we go. Let me get my, oops. Sorry, guys. There we go. Let's try that again. Okay. All right, so my name is Amber Ostendorf. I'm going to be talking about another tool that Russell mentioned a lot, which is essential to accessibility testing, but it can be often difficult to master, and that is screen readers. First, I just want to tell you a little bit about me. So I am a senior QA specialist at Lucid Software. I've been there for a little over 2.5 years. I've been studying accessibility for probably a little over a year. I got started when I volunteered to help on a VPAT, which is a voluntary product accessibility template. And I found it really interesting. I actually even liked reading the WCAG, which I think is a pretty rare thing. But I've also completed some accessibility QA testing curriculum courses from DQ University, and I am currently pursuing a web accessibility specialist certification from IAAP. I'm still learning, but I am excited to share what I've learned so far. Oh, back to that. On a personal note, that guy in the corner, that's my son. He is hearing impaired. So he's about 50% deaf. So it's important to me both on a professionally and a personal level that websites are accessible to everyone, so that they can use all the software and technology and everything. So it's really important to me. Okay, so I just want to talk really quick about what are screen readers. I'm sure everybody probably knows, but basically they're a form of assistive technology that renders text and image content as either speech or braille output. Screen readers are essential to people who are blind. They're also useful to people who are just visually impaired, illiterate, or have a learning disability. How do they work? So screen readers work by querying the accessibility API, which is basically a subset of the DOM for the operating system or browser. It will contain information such as names, description, roles, values, state, and structure of the web content and any events that need to be announced to the user. You can actually view the tree in the browser by going into the dev tools. So in Chrome, it's a right click, inspect, and then going to the elements tab, and you'll see the accessibility tab. On Firefox, same kind of thing, right click, inspect element, click on accessibility tab, and then turn on the accessibility features option, and the tree will populate. I don't want to spend a ton of time on the tree, but I think it's important to know that that's something you can utilize in conjunction with testing with screen readers as validation and also communication with your devs. So I want to talk a little bit about what the most common screen reader options are. The most common screen reader option is JAWS. It is a desktop application. It's made for Windows only. It's most commonly used in the workplace and in schools. It is a paid for subscription. It starts at about 90 for an individual and it goes up into the thousands. You can try it out in a demo mode for 40 minutes. You can try it out for 40 minutes and then it'll time out, and then you can restart your computer and get another 40 minutes. But you probably don't want to use that for any significant testing. They definitely frown upon that. It does have a significant learning curve from what I understand, and it can be very laggy at times because it does use a lot of RAM. The next most common screener option is NVDA. So this one's open source and it's free. It's made for both desktop and Windows only. It is developed by visually impaired programmers, which I thought was really cool. Definitely more simplistic and easier to use than JAWS, and it uses less RAM, so it's a lot faster. And I liked the user guide. I felt like it gave me information on anything I wanted to try. Another screen reader option is Narrator. It is for desktop and Windows as well. It comes built in on Windows 10. It's built by Microsoft. It does work best in Edge, and it only has limited support in other browsers. It does combine features from NVDA, JAWS, and VoiceOver, which is their way of trying to make it more familiar to the users who have been using those screen readers for a while. But it isn't, while it isn't as close in usage to JAWS or NVDA, it is growing in popularity. And then for Mac users, there's VoiceOver. So this comes built in on Mac and iOS products. It is fairly easy to use and it's fast. It is nice because it is the same essentially for desktop and iOS devices. So many of the screen readers I mentioned before have different variations on the keystrokes that you need to learn to accomplish certain tasks. So this is a consistent application for both desktop and mobile. And so that's really popular with accessible users. And then there's TalkBack, which is for Android. This comes pre-installed on Android devices. It's made by Google. One big drawback on it is it doesn't have a Braille input option, which is a very popular feature on VoiceOver. But because it's Android, it does allow users to access apps that are not on iOS. So it has some popularity there. Let's see, some things to keep in mind. So while accessible users will have a primary screen reader that they like to use, they will use the best screen reader for the tasks that they want to accomplish. Sometimes this will mean that they need to try out different screen readers to figure out which screen reader is best for the task. And that can be very frustrating, as you can imagine. At some point, most accessible users will use most of the screen readers that I mentioned at some point. In fact, 84% of users use one screen reader at work, which as most can imagine is probably JAWS, and one screen reader at home, which is likely to be NVDA. Because screen readers are not alike, and some of them work better in different environments as opposed to others, this means as testers, we want to make sure that we're testing in multiple screen readers and browsers. Otherwise, you're going to provide a bad experience if your user is in a different browser or a different screen reader. So the whole idea of accessibility is to ease access. So we want to make sure we have coverage to where our users are at. So here are the top reader and browser combinations that work the best. This is Firefox and Chrome work the best with NVDA and JAWS. Safari, as you can imagine, works best with VoiceOver, and Edge works the best with Narrator, but there is some support for NVDA and JAWS. So those are the ones that you likely want to touch on when you're testing. So also it's important to understand what accessibility users are using. So this is from a study done in June of this year by WebAM. As I mentioned before, JAWS is the clear winner, and it makes sense since it's in workplace and school settings most often. NVDA is a close alternative, and it's free, so like I said, most likely used at home. I've heard a lot of people like VoiceOver, but you do have to be a Mac user for it, so it's a little bit less there. And then you can see some of the other options as well. So what combinations are they using the most? So most of the time, most users are using JAWS with Chrome or NVDA with Chrome. So Chrome usually wins as the preferred browser. And then JAWS with Edge I found interesting, but then Firefox with JAWS and NVDA show up down here as well. So Edge is growing in popularity, but it's interesting that they're using it with JAWS when Narrator was built more for Edge. And then the next thing, so what operating system are they most likely to use? So most accessible users are in Windows by far. So about 91% of users prefer to use Windows. And that's why most of the screen readers are geared towards that audience. And then when it comes to mobile, about 90% are using a screen reader on a mobile device, but most are using iOS over Android. So they're going to be using that VoiceOver screen reader. Let's see, learning to test with screen readers. So like I said before, it is a significant learning curve, and I'm continuing to learn it myself. But I think the first thing to do before you even start testing with a screen reader is to learn how to use the screen reader. You want to spend a few hours learning the keyboard commands and becoming comfortable with the screen reader to use a screen reader completely without a mouse. On this slide, I have put some practice pages that are from the WC3 website and also some keystroke cheat sheets for you to learn from and for these top 3 screen readers. So I would suggest printing out a cheat sheet, trying a bunch of things, trying different sites, different interactions. As far as some of the things you want to practice with a screen reader, you want to be able to read the page title. That should load when the page loads. And then reading the page line by line. You want to be able to toggle between a browse and a focus mode, as most screen readers have that. The browse mode is moving the cursor line by line to read the content, while the focus mode allows you to interact with the element. You want to move through sections of the page using landmarks. So that's one of the things you'll be testing for, is making sure proper use of landmarks so that the website is separated correctly with using landmarks. So that a user can skip through the landmarks to find the different sections of the page. You also want to use headings or test using headings to determine the hierarchy of the page. Can you determine the hierarchy of the page through the screen reader by listening to the headings? You want to be able to read and interact with links, reading lists, reading images, reading tables. You want to also read and be able to read and interact with forms correctly. That's just really high level of things to practice, but that will give you a good start as to learning how to use the screen reader, and then it'll prepare you for when you actually start testing. Last but not least, a couple of testing tips that I've been learning as I've been going. So you want to test at least one screen reader per operating system supported by your product. Like I said, it's important to cover as many users as you possibly can. but you want to make sure you're at least covering that at base level. If there is only one screen reader that you can test with at the time, it should be NVDA. NVDA is very close to JAWS, even though it's less robust. It is a close experience, so it's a good one to start with. You do want to mix up functional testing with different browsers and screen readers. So like I said before, maybe one test session you're doing Chrome with NVDA, and then maybe you're doing Firefox with NVDA, or kind of mix it up so that you're getting a full coverage. Like I said, because the screen readers are different, so you may find different bugs that are screen reader specific. And so that's really important to mix it up a little bit. You also want to keep in mind to test older hardware platforms and screen reader versions. Sometimes platforms can be very outdated, so it's important that you add this to your testing plan. You also want to test where the users are, like I mentioned before. Like I said, WebAM has a study every 2 years, so you can kind of understand what accessibility users are using and shift your testing plan if you need to. And then simulating screen readers is going to not be sufficient for testing accessibility. You want to actually test with a screen reader and go through experience like you would as an accessible user. And put down the mouse. Like, it has to be keyboard only. You have to get proficient enough to be able to navigate around with just the keyboard. And then I also suggest it's always important to talk to accessible users, like learn from them, learn how they're using it, the screen reader, and how they're navigating. I think that's just a really important part of any testing process. Are there any questions?
That was wonderful. Thank you so
much.
Daniel, I saw you come off mute.